This is the first time I've made a comparison video based on a request on the channel. Shout out to @Martina_E. And honestly, I found the idea of stacking Paris and Montreal side by side quite intriguing, because outside of the fact that they're the largest French-speaking metropolises in Europe and North America respectively, they're drastically different experiences. It should go without saying that, despite their shared Francophone language, both cities are densely packed with distinctive cultures, architecture, and cityscapes. Now here on A Sense of Travel, my goal is to capture all 5 senses of as many cities, countries, and natural landmarks around the world as I possibly can, so that I can accurately immerse you into the physical experience of these places through the screen. That said, we're not looking at rankings or objective reasons as to why one city is better than the other. Instead, how do Paris and Montreal stack up in their contrasting visual environs, the way the air smells, the delicious culinary classics that define their taste palates, the sounds that fill your ears in the city streets, the way the air physically feels, and the ambience and lore that creates the magic of the atmosphere? We'll find out today in the latest installment of Comparing the Senses, Paris versus Montreal. Before we take on the senses, I want to emphasize again that the idea here isn't to rank these two cities or to compare things like HDI, GDP, and quality of life. This is entirely focused on the 5 senses that create the atmosphere of each city. However, we'll still take a quick look at the cities by the numbers. Sitting in the heart of northern France is Paris, the glittering French capital city. Paris's city proper is home to just over 2 million people, but it's the metro area that tells the full story, and with over 13 million people, it's among the largest in all of Europe. Across the Atlantic, in the southwest corner of the Canadian province of Quebec, sits Montreal. The second largest city in all of Canada, Montreal proper has over 1.7 million residents, pretty similar to Paris's city proper. But again, it's the metro area that tells the full story, and with 4.2 million people in the Montreal metro area, it's still a large city, but quite a bit smaller than Paris. So the first thing to look at when stacking up Paris and Montreal is perhaps the most obvious thing. Their dense, historic cityscapes. We'll kick off in Paris. Despite a history that dates back thousands of years, Paris's present-day cityscape has a rather sophisticated uniformity to it. When you imagine yourself in the heart of Paris, the first thing that may come to mind is the term wrought iron. The boulevards, alleyways, and most notably the buildings are a handsome beige or gray stone rising above tree-lined streets in roughly 4 to 6 stories with, as you might guess, wrought iron balconies and accents alongside them. The elegant and stately buildings are largely topped in gray chateau-style rooflines and coated in beige stone Art Nouveau facades. Everywhere you turn are cafes, bistros, and brasseries, most of which include covered outdoor patios, all of which are busy and bustling. Complete with sliding doors to open if it's warm or to close when it's cold, Paris has really mastered the art of alfresco dining. Walking the streets of Paris feels almost romantic and certainly artfully picturesque. Paris and its metro area are absolutely massive, and the best place to capture the scale is from atop the city's most iconic structure itself, the iron, 1,000-foot-tall Eiffel Tower. From up here, you'll find an endless expanse of dense, winding buildings and streets coated in hues of beige, gray, and deep greens and blues, set against a hazy, gray-blue horizon of softly rolling hills. The low-rise skyline is graced by stone spires, ornate wrought iron glass halls, domes, and graceful arches, but the cityscape is so vast that you have to play a game of Where is Waldo to spot them. Now there are a few skyscrapers, but the La Défense district sits a bit outside the city instead of in its core. Despite the relative uniformity of Paris's dense,
cobbled and winding alleyways and graceful boulevards, there are dozens of neighborhoods and landmarks that break up the pattern and pierce the sky, like Montmartre and its striking, domed Sacré-Cœur, the jaw-dropping Eiffel Tower, the eccentric red windmill atop Moulin Rouge, the Gothic bell towers of the Notre Dame Cathedral, the sprawling Baroque masterpiece of a palace that holds the Louvre, and countless others. Paris literally glows at night. Like, yes, the Eiffel Tower glows and occasionally glitters, but just in general, things feel very golden. The endless expanse of metropolitan Paris twinkles in the night sky, glowing in a soft amber and white, with the Eiffel Tower and its glittering lights as its magnificent centerpiece. Even the streetlights glow in a soft, orangey gold. In fact, even in the daytime, you'll notice a ton of golden accents on the buildings and gates and towering flamboyant golden statues atop marble pillars.
Paris's River Seine, despite being famously dirty, is quite an elegant experience.
The city really leverages that winding, deep blue river perfectly. Promenades line either side of the river pretty much throughout the entire city, adorned with small gardens, boat deck cafes, and arched stone bridges. By night, the river turns a deep, dark blue, reflecting the golden light of the city from its gentle ripples. It's quite a romantic experience, really.
Paris's millennia of history may have culminated in a surprisingly uniform cityscape, but Montreal's cityscape is quite the opposite. A perfect reflection of its much younger and yet rich history and distinctive identity. It's clear right off the bat, whether by the French language, the chic fashion, or the high-flying Quebec flags, that Montreal has a clear sense of place, which is quite different from many other North American cities. Montreal as a whole feels quintessentially urban. Not New York City skyscraper urban, but, textbook urban. This is the most apparent in the patchwork of neighborhoods that surround the 764-foot-tall peak of Mount Royal, the city's regal, towering namesake itself.
The neighborhoods in Montreal are properly urban. I mean, it's blocks upon blocks upon blocks of endless storefronts and then houses on top of them, which is exactly how it's supposed to be.
Noticeable throughout these properly urban streets is a much higher concentration of local restaurants, cafes, and stores than any other North American city I've visited. Rivaled perhaps only by Quebec City, Montreal has one of the best Old Town districts in the New World. Vieux Montreal, or Old Montreal. Winding along the edge of the city's downtown near the St. Lawrence River, this cobblestone-layered district is graced by gray stone buildings on either side of its high street, home to dozens of cafes, restaurants, markets, and boutique shops. Although a bit wider and more spacious than its ancestors, the low-rise high street, or Rue St. Paul, transports you across the ocean to the historic city centers of Europe. As you stroll around the bends of Rue St. Paul, decorative, ornate spires and domes pop out on the horizon, magnificent and bold by day and regal and glowing by night. Many of the domes and steeples throughout Vieux Montreal and even parts of downtown are painted in a gleaming silver. The boutiques, shops, and the magnificently domed Bon Secours market are chock full of Canadian and Quebecois pride. Many of them feature a common product that unites not only each of these boutiques and shops, but Canadians as a whole: maple syrup. In fact, most of these shops even carry maple syrup-scented candles, and it took a lot of willpower by me not to buy each variation. Between the Old Town and the peak of Mount Royal is Montreal's bustling, gritty, and colorful downtown. This part of the city, like Vieux Montreal, is incredibly clean and feels remarkably safe for such a large urban area. The urban canyons are lined with glimmering, modern skyscrapers, ornate and decorative 18th and 19th century brick and stone storefronts, grand historic churches, and stretches of beautiful urban parks full of trees and string lights. Throughout downtown, you'll find streets draped in lights, a layered blend of modern buildings mixed with Gothic and Baroque Revival architecture, and a skyline dotted with bronze domes, arches, and skyscrapers. Montreal's natural side is postcard perfect. The deep blue and cascading St. Lawrence River surrounds the island city like a moat, and during my visit, the parks within it, like La Fontaine and Jean Park, feature bursts of crisp autumn foliage, woodsy hiking trails, and a backyard party atmosphere that makes Montreal feel like golden hour personified in a city.
To sum it up quickly, Paris is a low-rise sea of beige stone, Art Nouveau ornamentals, flamboyant statues, hedge-lined gardens, wrought iron balconies, and enough expressionism to keep it just the right amount of weird. While Montreal's earth-toned cityscape is a densely populated patchwork of North American-style neighborhoods, old European cobbled streets, a glittering downtown, plenty of Quebecois quirk, and rolling natural beauty that perfectly captures the term golden hour. Now, the city's color palettes differ quite a bit regarding their overall cityscapes, as indicated here. When you see a video or a picture of a place and you try to imagine what it must feel like to actually be there, an important component of that is the way the air smells. Let's see how Paris and Montreal stack up.
Anecdotally, at least, I've always heard and been told that Paris smells awful. Like that there's this pungent stench that's associated with the city. As of this video's recording, I've been to Paris 3 times in various parts of the year, and I don't get it.
Overall, it smells fine. I don't get what people are talking about when they say Paris smells horrible. I really don't.
I'm not saying that there's not like the occasional smell of pee or something, but I mean, that's any big city anywhere. The misty air throughout Paris's elegant urban canyons instead brings wafts of various, rather fruity perfumes, cigarette smoke, a layer of urban musk, wet concrete and stone, and auto fumes. As stereotypical as it might sound, you can actually smell freshly baking bread in the mornings, heightened by the damp air. You'll even catch wafts of sweet crepes from the dozens of little street-side stands throughout the city. Paris proper has a population density that rivals Manhattan, despite having little to no skyscrapers. That population density means that there is a ton of room for lush, beautifully landscaped, fountain-adorned parks, which add a layer of minty and floral-smelling gardens and damp earth. To top it off, the River Seine, which winds throughout the city, adds a cool note of river water to the air. If I were to make a Paris-scented candle, it would smell of fruity cologne, sweet crepes, freshly baked baguettes, urban musk, wet stone, and damp earth. The scents of Montreal, as stereotypical as it might sound, really do blend the influences of both France and Canada into one Quebecois aroma. At a base level, especially in places like Vieux-Montreal, the air literally has an undercurrent of sweet maple syrup. That's not a huge surprise though, because over 75% of the world's maple syrup is produced here in Quebec. That sweet undercurrent is countered, however, by another baseline scent that echoes their French counterparts. You'll find that cigarettes still play a large role in the day-to-day life in Montreal, giving the air a bitter and smoky note to offset that sweet-smelling maple syrup. Throughout the deep layers and neighborhoods of the city, bakeries, restaurants, delis, and bagel shops, which we'll touch on soon, bring wafts of fresh-baked bread and hearty poutine to your nostrils, joining those more urban scents of damp concrete and red clay brick. Particularly along the river's edge, but honestly within the deep stone and concrete urban canyons as well, the smell of fresh river water from the St. Lawrence River permeates that crisp, earthy, and woodsy air. All things considered, a Montreal-scented candle, were I to create one, would smell of maple syrup, smoke, baguettes, fried potatoes, fresh river water, and fallen leaves.
Let me know in the comments which of these two cities has a scent profile that you prefer more. Maybe I'll create these candles one day after all. Much like their cityscapes in general, comparing the tastes of Paris and Montreal truly is apples to oranges, and from a truly neutral stance, comparing may not even be the right word. It's pure contrast. Nonetheless, let's take a look at some of those tastes that really show that contrast between the two culinary experiences.
I think it goes without saying that dining in Paris is an experience that you really can't replicate elsewhere. Even the most casual of meals can feel like a special occasion, especially coming from an American perspective where restaurants want you in and out as quickly as possible. Here are some of the world-famous, carb-loaded, and body-warming dishes that accompany that sophisticated Parisian dining experience. Escargot. Escargot is a typical starter or even a main dish in France, and yes, they're snails. Just like mussels, you pull them right from the shell. Now frankly, I think escargot is delicious. You just kinda have to get over the fact that you're eating a snail. Besides, these little guys mostly just taste like what they're cooked with. In this case, a lot of garlic and butter. Ratatouille. Most of my fellow Americans and I learned about this homemade French classic from the Disney and Pixar movie, but the French have known all along just how delicious ratatouille is. Rich, saucy, and filled with a strong taste of tomato puree and zucchini, I enjoyed my ratatouille with salmon, al fresco style. In the rain. Classic Paris. Quiche Lorraine. This classic French dish from the Lorraine region is a quiche pie of eggs, cream, pork, and cheese. You can certainly taste the cream and cheese in this warm, savory slice, and alongside a piping cup of coffee, is perfect for a rainy Paris day. French baked goods. The scent of baking bread wafting through the elegant Parisian streets doesn't come from nowhere. Breakfast in Paris usually consists of fresh and delicious bread and pastries, and probably also a cigarette and coffee. Pain au chocolat and pain vienne were some of my favorites. Flaky, fluffy, buttery, and fresh, both of these bready French pastries are either filled with or covered in perfectly sweet chocolate. Montreal has a taste palette that kind of reflects its long, bitter, and snowy winters. It's hearty, cozy, and perfect for a candlelit night in a pub or bundled up lunch in a local deli. After you get a sense of these dishes, you'll get what I mean. Poutine. This famous Quebecois staple is dense. Atop a large plate comes fries, thick-cut cheese curds, and heavy gravy, which really dominates the flavor palette in a good way. The toppings vary, but I chose mine with some delicious grilled chicken. The perfect bar food, my order was from Montreal Poutine in the Old Town. Montreal bagels. There's a bitter bagel rivalry between Fairmount and Saint-Viateur. I tried mine from Fairmount, and holy cow, it was absolutely insane. Thinner than its American counterparts, this bagel tasted wood-fired and was perfectly soft on the inside, with an ever so slight crunch on the outside. I genuinely could not believe how delicious it was. The Walensky Special. The Walensky Classic Sandwich at Walensky's Light Lunch Shop, not far from Fairmount Bagels, is a hearty lunch classic. This small sandwich is made with 5 slices of salami, 1 slice of bologna, mustard, this part's optional, and a slice of Swiss, this part is not, beneath a grilled and flattened brioche. The Smoked Meat Sandwich. Smoked meat is one of Montreal's claims to fame, and the smoked meat sandwich at Schwartz Deli is incredible. Salty, tender, and densely packed into the sandwich, This corned beef and soft rice staple can be found in Montreal's Little Portugal neighborhood.
The tastes of Paris are light, bready, sweet, and in some cases, a little strange, whereas Montreal's flavors are meat-heavy, gravy-doused, smoky, and match the vibe of a cozy pub or a Quebecois winter log cabin. And of course, this is not even close to a full list of the defining tastes of each city. Let's suppose for a moment that you could step into a photo, video, or more appropriately, oil canvas painting of Paris. What would it sound like?
As you imagine yourself strolling beneath the wrought iron balconies and towering trees of Paris's urban canyons, imagine the sounds of crows cawing, pedestrians walking on pavement and cobblestone, silverware clanking in the outdoor dining patios, and tons of motorcycles echoing from the stone facades. In some places, you can hear the sound of heavy trains on their tracks above you.
Now, Paris may look elegant, chic, and sophisticated, but its soundscape can still feel just as urban and chaotic as any other megacity.
Now, it's right around here that you get the full experience of the Parisian soundscape, right? Because you've got tons of traffic, so you hear a lot of cars, a lot of engines. You hear those French sirens, the ones that kind of sound almost whiny. Off in the distance, horns honking, pedestrians on cobbled stones. I mean, it's crazy, it's chaotic. But in a lot of ways, that's Paris. And not necessarily in a bad way, but it is an active city, put it that way.
The well-manicured parks and gardens take you back to a Paris that existed well before the advent of cars and trains. Especially in the promenades along the riverside, boat engines, the sounds of rippling waves, and a brisk breeze fill your ears.
Montreal's soundscape, despite being a great deal smaller than Paris, is just as urban and bustling.
As you imagine yourself on a casual stroll on a fall's day in the city, imagine the sounds of your own shoes landing on cobblestones while a series of church bells echo throughout the concrete, brick, and stone urban canyons around you, on the hour. The bustling sounds of auto traffic, chattering crowds speaking the Quebecois style of French, and pop music bumping out from the vibrant storefronts, restaurants, and cars join the soundscape throughout the dozens and dozens of quintessentially urban neighborhoods. The sounds of the city streets are far from the only ones that make up the soundtrack of Montreal. For example, down in the old port area, you should imagine the sound of rushing water from the immense and wide St. Lawrence River. Strangely, despite being quite far inland, the sounds of seagulls occasionally accompany the soundscape.
Here's how the soundscapes of Paris and Montreal stack up. Paris experiences a temperate oceanic climate, which means warm summers, cool to mild winters, and not a huge temperature difference between the two compared to other climates. It also means it rains. A lot. It feels like every day.
Every single day.
It's not actually every day, of course, and, rainy days in Paris aren't actually that bad to begin with. I mean, you're still in Paris.
You know what, Paris, I've embraced the rain. This is actually kind of nice.
Unlike cities in Europe like Paris that experience more moderate climates at high latitudes, thanks to the Atlantic Gulf Stream, Montreal experiences a climate very much in line with its latitude. Montreal's climate is classified as humid continental, which basically means 4 distinct seasons that include hot, humid summers and cold, snowy winters. For example, the average high temperature in July is around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but in January it sits around 23. Thank goodness for that underground city, huh? That said, I haven't been to Montreal in the winter yet, but I bet that's pretty magical. So here's my take. It's okay to romanticize things. That's what makes the novelty of traveling so exhilarating. That being said, to really capture the spirit and the magic of places around the world, you have to let your imagination roam a little bit wild. After all, urban legends, mythological fairy tales, and dramatized history are a big part of the identity of cities and countries worldwide, and the stories, atmosphere, and lore that Paris and Montreal bring to the table carry a lot of weight. Letting fantasy and folklore infiltrate your mind as you wander about can really bring out the mystique and charm in different places. Plus, it just makes it more fun. Let's take a look at the ambience that each city evokes. We'll kick off in Paris. Paris is a city that is absolutely dripping in whimsical fantasy and a rich lore of its own. There is no denying that Paris has one of the strongest senses of identity that a city can have. It's artistic, romantic, chic, sophisticated, and, well, strange. Now, there was a lot of controversy at the opening ceremonies of the 2024 Olympics, but I think it's important to understand this. Paris is weird. It always has been, and I hope it always will be. This quirkiness and weirdness have created some of the best art humankind has ever experienced. The Pigalle district is a great example of Paris's unashamed expressionism. The birthplace of the once seductive can-can dance, Moulin Rouge and its flashing red windmill roof anchor the district, famous for its theater, nightlife, and other, adult entertainment. This area has the energy of a classic carousel at a carnival. And speaking of that art, wandering the narrow passageways throughout the city make you feel like you've stepped into an art canvas depicting the finest, most sophisticated standard of living in the Renaissance era. If you didn't know any better, you'd forget that you were living in the 21st century altogether. A beret atop your head, a cigarette in one hand, sunglasses on, and a strange, Cirque du Soleil reminiscent adventure ahead. I alluded to this before, but Montreal gives urban life to the concept of golden hour. I think if an autumn sunset could be personified into a major city, Montreal would have to be the one. That true North Canadian sensation is present with you throughout town, with a coziness that feels as warm and sweet as Quebec's maple syrup, even though the air outside is far from warm. This cozy autumn sensation blends with the distinctive identity of Quebec as a whole. French is the official language of the province, which was once a French colony known as New France prior to its eventual conquest by the British. This aspect of the province's history, coupled with the preservation of many of its cathedrals, homes, and markets dating back to the 17th century, give Montreal itself an atmosphere and general vibe far closer to one you may experience in Europe than the rest of North America. All of the signage is written in French, distances and temperatures are measured in metrics, pharmacy signs, like in Europe, are green, not red. Even the Starbucks signs read Café Starbucks. As you explore the city, you'll hear French being spoken far more than you'll hear English. There's a quirkiness to Montreal that feels rather Parisian, and you'll see little homages to that all over the place. There's also a certain French chic and stiffness in the air, especially in the fashion. Blend it all together and you have an ambience that you can really only experience right here in Canada's second largest metropolis. Comparisons aren't inherently competitive things, and the idea here isn't to pit these two cities up against each other. In fact, the idea is to celebrate the fact that there's so much world to discover, experience, and explore. Thanks for diving into the truly amazing Francophone cities of Paris and Montreal with me today, and stay tuned for more city comparisons in the near future. As always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, au revoir.